My husband kissed my forehead at the departure gate, and I felt the outline of a phone in his jacket pocket vibrate 3 times in a row. He did not check it. That told me everything. A man who ignores his phone in public is a man who already knows who is calling and does not want me to see the name on the screen. My name is Rachel Cohen. I am 31 years old, and on the day the story truly began, I was standing in a customs line in Bangkok, holding a boarding pass in one hand and the calm, practiced smile of a woman who already knew she was about to be betrayed. If you have ever loved someone who was quietly planning your destruction while calling you paranoid, tell me where you are watching from tonight. And if this story pulls you in, stay until the very end, because the final twist is not the one you are expecting. 6 months earlier, my husband Daniel Cohen was a mid-level operations manager at a logistics company that shipped pharmaceutical supplies across 3 continents. On paper, he was steady, boring, dependable. The kind of man your parents approve of at dinner, but numbers do not lie, and I have spent 9 years as a corporate risk auditor learning exactly how to read the small print that people hope nobody ever checks. 6 months earlier, I found the first crack. It started with a shipment discrepancy that should not have existed. A container manifest from Daniel's department listed weights that did not match the invoices. Small differences. 1 kilogram here, 2 kilograms there. The kind of gap most people would blame on rounding errors and forget by lunchtime. I am not most people. I opened a private spreadsheet on my personal laptop, the same laptop Daniel believed I only used for grocery lists and photo albums, and I started tracking every shipment his name touched. For 3 weeks I said nothing. I smiled at dinner. I asked about his day. I let him believe his wife was exactly who she had always been, a woman too gentle and too trusting to ever look closely at a man she loved. That belief was his first mistake, and it would not be his last. The second thing I noticed was Priya. She worked as a junior coordinator in Daniel's office, 26 years old, always laughing a little too loudly at his jokes in the group photos he never thought I would scroll through. At first I told myself it was nothing. Then I found the hotel charge. A 4-star resort 40 minutes outside the city, booked for a Tuesday night when Daniel had told me he was staying late for inventory audits. I did not confront him. A woman with only suspicion and no proof is easy to dismiss as insecure. A woman with proof is a woman who cannot be argued with. So I kept building the file. Bank transfers routed through a supplier account that did not officially exist. A storage unit rental paid in cash, 30 minutes from our house, that Daniel had never once mentioned in 9 years of marriage. Every piece felt small on its own. Together, they formed the outline of a man living a second life directly beside the one he shared with me. Then came the trip. Daniel announced it on a Sunday morning over coffee, his voice warm in a way I had almost forgotten. Thailand, he said. Just the 2 of us. A chance to remember why we got married in the first place. He held my hand across the table and told me he had been distant lately, that work had consumed him, that he wanted to make it right. For a moment, one small foolish moment, I almost let myself believe him. Then he mentioned that Priya would be joining a separate work trip to Bangkok during the exact same week, for what he called an unrelated supplier meeting that had been planned for months. The coincidence was so clumsy it was almost insulting. He thought grief and hope would make me stupid. He did not understand that grief had made me exact. I said yes to the trip with a bright, easy smile. Inside, I was already 3 steps ahead of him, because a man who plans a second life rarely realizes his first wife has learned to read a paper trail better than any accountant his company employs. I packed my bags with visible excitement and quiet calculation, folding sundresses on top of a mind that was already rehearsing every possible version of what Daniel might be planning. I did not yet know exactly what he intended, but I knew a man does not fly his mistress to the same city as his wife, unless he needs her there for a reason that has nothing to do with romance. 2 nights before our flight, I woke at 1 in the morning to an empty space beside me in bed. The bathroom light was off. The hallway was dark. I found Daniel in his home office, the door barely open, a sliver of lamplight spilling onto the carpet. I stood in the shadows and watched him kneel over my open suitcase, a small utility knife in his hand, slicing carefully along the interior seam of the lining. My chest tightened, but I did not move. I did not breathe loudly. I watched my husband, the man who had promised to protect me 9 years earlier in front of 100 guests, tuck something long and rectangular, wrapped tightly in plastic and tape, deep into the frame of my suitcase. He smoothed the lining back into place with the care of a surgeon closing an incision. He packed my folded clothes on top of it, layer by layer, until nothing looked disturbed at all. Then he zipped the bag closed, wiped down the utility knife, and slipped back into bed beside me as if he had done nothing more dramatic than check the front door lock. Within minutes, his breathing slowed into the steady rhythm of a man completely at peace with what he had just done. I lay awake until sunrise, staring at the ceiling, running the arithmetic of my own life. If that package was what I suspected it was, Daniel was not simply planning to leave me. He was planning to make sure I never left an airport as a free woman again. And if I was going to survive what he had built for me, I could not react as his wife. I had to think like the auditor who had spent 9 years finding exactly the kind of lies that men like Daniel believed were invisible. So I waited for him to fall fully asleep, and then I got up, walked quietly down the hallway, and carried my own suitcase into the guest bathroom, locking the door behind me. What I found wrapped inside that lining would change everything I thought I understood about the man sleeping in the next room, and by the time the sun came up, I already knew exactly what I was going to do about it. Inside the lining was a dense, tightly wrapped brick, and beneath the outer layer of plastic sat something Daniel had not expected anyone to find. A second, smaller pouch taped flat against the package. Inside it was a folded printout, a shipping manifest with Daniel's digital signature on it, dated for a container that had already cleared customs under his authorization 2 weeks earlier. Attached to it was a note in his own handwriting, 3 lines long, addressed to a name I did not recognize. It confirmed a delivery location in Bangkok and a payment schedule tied to a numbered account. My husband was not simply hiding drugs in my suitcase to frame me. He was using me as the mule for the final leg of a trafficking operation he had been running quietly through his company's supply chain for over a year. And the money trail led directly back to the storage unit and the offshore account I had already been tracking for months. I did not scream. I did not cry. I photographed every page, resealed the pouch exactly as I found it, and returned the package to the lining of my suitcase with the same precision Daniel had used to hide it there. Then I sat on the bathroom floor at 3 in the morning and made a decision that would define the rest of this story. I was not going to hand this to the police from my kitchen table. A phone call without leverage is just an accusation, and accusations against a well-liked executive with a spotless public record rarely go anywhere on their own. I needed Daniel caught with his own hands on the evidence, in a place where his guilt could not be explained away by a good lawyer and a sympathetic jury. I spent the next 2 days acting like a woman looking forward to saving her marriage. I packed sundresses. I asked Daniel about restaurant recommendations in Bangkok. I let him believe, completely, that his plan was moving exactly as designed. On the morning of the flight, while Daniel showered, I moved the package out of my suitcase and into a padded pouch inside my carry-on tote, replacing the space with folded towels of matching weight so nothing would feel different when he lifted the bag. Then I did something Daniel never saw coming. I had already made contact with my cousin Marcus, a supervisor with the Thai Customs Liaison Office who worked directly with international task forces on pharmaceutical trafficking cases. I sent him everything 2 nights before we left: the manifest, the account numbers, the photographs, every piece of Daniel's operation, laid out in a file with my own name nowhere near the evidence chain. At the airport, Daniel was unusually attentive, carrying my bags, complimenting my dress, glancing at his watch every few minutes with a nervous energy he tried to disguise as excitement. Priya was there too, 3 people back in the same line, pretending not to know us, wearing sunglasses indoors like a woman who had never once considered that a lie this large requires better acting than that. When we reached the scanning checkpoint, Daniel's hand rested on the small of my back, guiding me forward with a gentleness that made my skin crawl, because I knew exactly what he believed was about to happen to me. My suitcase rolled through the scanner in silence. Clean. Daniel's smile flickered, confused, but he covered it quickly, assuming a delay in processing. Then it was Priya's bag on the belt, the same one Daniel had quietly swapped tags with mine at check-in, believing he was sending the evidence toward me while sending Priya safely home first with a clean conscience she never asked for. What he did not know was that I had already redirected the actual package into a separate declared parcel, checked directly to Marcus's task force under diplomatic transfer paperwork he had helped me file 2 days earlier. There was nothing left in any suitcase for the dogs to find, because the only real evidence in this story was already sitting in a federal file 6,000 miles away. Confusion spread across Daniel's face as officers stepped forward, not toward the luggage belt, but toward him directly. Marcus walked the checkpoint with the calm authority of a man who had read every page I sent him twice. He held up the printed manifest, Daniel's own signature circled in red, and asked one simple question. Can you explain why your authorization appears on a controlled shipment tied to an active trafficking investigation? Daniel's mouth opened and nothing came out. Priya spun toward him, her sunglasses sliding down her nose, demanding to know what he was talking about, insisting she knew nothing about any shipment, any account, any of it. In that moment, watching 2 people who had spent a year planning my destruction turn on each other in front of federal officers, I felt something settle inside my chest that I had not felt in months. Not triumph exactly, something quieter, certainty. Daniel looked at me across the checkpoint, and for the first time in 9 years of marriage, I watched real fear move across his face instead of the practiced concern he used whenever I asked an inconvenient question. You knew, he said, barely above a whisper. I did not answer him with words. I simply held up my phone, showing him the same manifest Marcus was holding, the same handwriting, the same signature already sent to his company's compliance office, to federal investigators, and to the board that had trusted him with a director title 8 months earlier. He did not need me to say anything else. His own signature had already said it for him. They led Daniel away first, then Priya, both of them shouting explanations that contradicted each other with every sentence, each one certain the other had orchestrated the entire plan. I stood at the checkpoint, coffee in hand, and let a customs officer walk me through a brief statement before releasing me to my connecting gate, a woman with nothing in her luggage but clothes, and nothing on her conscience but the quiet exhaustion of 9 months spent gathering proof one careful page at a time. If there is one thing this experience taught me, it is that people who underestimate you are usually the ones who never bothered to ask what you actually do for a living. Daniel spent a year assuming I was too soft, too trusting, too distracted by our marriage to notice the second life he was building beside it. That assumption is what destroyed him, not luck, not accident, simple patient arithmetic. He forgot that the woman he married had spent 9 years finding exactly the kind of hidden numbers that men like him believed no one would ever check. Walking away from that marriage was not about revenge. It was about refusing to let someone else write the ending to my own story. If you are sitting somewhere right now, sensing that something does not add up in your own life, trust that instinct. The quiet suspicion you keep pushing down is very often the first page of a truth someone else is desperately trying to keep you from reading.